Joining me, the nation's top infectious disease expert and chief advisor to President Biden, Dr. Anthony Fauci. It's a pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Good to be with you.
Florida tops the list for the number of coronavirus variants nationwide. The positivity rate's rising about 0.5% a week. Florida is third in the nation for COVID virus infections overall. And the state basically has a totally open for business shingle up, full arenas and stadiums for events. Asking for trouble, Dr. Fauci?
You know, unfortunately, that is a risky proposition there, because what we don't want to do is to give this virus, which if left to its own devices, is going to surge up. The important thing, as we get more and more vaccines going into the arms of people, that we will be able to control this virus and get ourselves back to some form of normality. But to prematurely declare victory by pulling back on the public health measures, I believe is ill-advised. We all understand COVID fatigue, and we all want to see that we want to get ourselves back to some form of normality. We've been doing this for a long time, but we're going in the right direction with the vaccines. We're very fortunate that we have 3 vaccines that are highly efficacious. That's going to be the end game answer to this. That's what's going to get us back to normal. But it would be counterproductive to throw aside all of the public health measures that can keep the virus contained until, and it won't be very long, until the vaccine can actually get the upper hand over this particular virus. We've seen this happen in Israel. Israel has gotten a certain critical proportion of their population vaccinated, and all of a sudden the virus load goes right down. Right now, as a nation, we're averaging on a weekly basis between 60 and 70,000 new infections. That is completely unacceptable, because if you stay at that level, there's a real risk to get another surge. And that's why we encourage people to hang in there a bit longer with the kinds of things that we know can contain the virus: the universal wearing of masks, the physical distancing, the avoiding congregate settings, not permanently by any means, but just until the vaccines can take over.
You mentioned the wearing of masks. I have a lot of people say, okay, I'm vaccinated. Do I need to wear a mask? Do they?
Well, you know, it depends on the level of infection in the community, because we know, I think something that people don't fully appreciate, understandably so, because you could say, hey, I'm vaccinated, so why do I need to wear a mask? No doubt, the risk to you of getting infected is very, very low. And the risk of getting a serious outcome is even lower when you're vaccinated. But what can happen, and we'll learn more about it in the next couple of months, is that because you're vaccinated, you could get infected without knowing it, get no symptoms, but yet have virus in your nasopharynx and in your nose. That wouldn't bother you because you're pretty well protected. But what you might do inadvertently is infect someone else by the shedding of virus from your nasopharynx. That person could then go on to get a serious outcome. Also, we're starting to see, and Florida knows this, that there are variants around that are variably protected by the vaccine. Most of the time, the protection is really, really very good. But in some people, particularly elderly and others, who, even though they're vaccinated, they might be vulnerable to a variant, you want to make sure that we protect everyone, ourselves and the people around us. Within a reasonable period of time, as more and more people get vaccinated, and as that level of infection gets lower and lower in the community, you're going to see a pulling back on a lot of the public health mandates, as it were, or suggestions or recommendations. People will have a lot more flexibility of going about in society, going to restaurants, enjoying themselves at events when there are other people there. For sure, that will happen. We just need to hang in there a bit longer.
So that brings me to the breakthrough rate. I've heard enough interviews with you to know that you're not surprised by people getting COVID after being vaccinated, but the rate is relatively low. What's that tell you?
Well, that tells you that the vaccines really work. I mean, that's important. That's a good news proposition. There was a report recently of 5,814, I believe, breakthroughs that were seen in people 2 weeks after they were fully vaccinated. Well, when you're vaccinating tens and tens of millions of people, the last count that there have been now 131 million people who've received at least one dose of vaccine, a couple of thousand breakthroughs still keeps the efficacy of that vaccine within the 90+% bracket. So that's not surprising to see that.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, appreciate your time and your expertise. Have a great day.
Good to be with you. Thank you.